Continuing from the previous account, where a supposed safe zone has morphed into a perilous blend of conflict and flooding, and where water in western Russia serves as more than just hydration, it's a lifeline for power, farming, and armed forces logistics. Can you fathom a single strike turning a dam into a weapon of mass disruption, isolating soldiers and forcing them to wade through rising waters just to survive? Imagine the chill of muddy currents lapping at your boots, the metallic tang of flooding vehicles filling your lungs, and the deafening roar of uncontained rivers claiming what was once secure territory. The dam in the Belgorod region and its surrounding reservoirs were the backbone of local farms and military routes alike. When they falter, it's not merely taps running dry. Fuel for armored convoys evaporates. Hospitals lose their vital energy. Bakeries flicker out without power. Worsening this chaos, flooding unleashes a graver threat. Pumps already failing from prolonged blackouts now lay useless. Accessible water vanishes. What's left turns vile and unfit. Experts warn that without swift fixes in weeks, a arid calamity akin to Crimea's could engulf Belgorod, leaving fields barren and homes parched. This havoc hits not only everyday residents but reverberates across Russia's northeastern battlefront. Belgorod acts as a pivotal hub for Russian pushes toward Kharkiv. At least 4 motorized infantry and special forces regiments are based here. Supply chains for the 6th Army and 44th Corps flow through it too. Artillery emplacements and fuel caches near the dam. Along the Grafovka and Nazia Gol river edges, now drown under waves. Certain squads stand cut off. Resupply? Impossible. Evacuation? A distant dream. This delivers more than structural damage, it's a crushing wound to spirits and teamwork. Troops scramble to salvage drenched machines, hauling ammunition waist-deep in frigid flows. A scenario where field support grinds to total paralysis, evoking panic and disarray. Ukraine's signal rings loud. You wrecked Kharkivka, now floods retaliate against you. Scenes from Belgorod mirror apocalyptic turmoil. Convoy trucks mingle with armored beasts. Refugees clutch bags and beloved animals, fleeing in vans. Others forsake vehicles, stranded by absent gasoline. No flowing water. No glowing lights. Outlets shuttered. Cash dispensers inert. Authorities claim over 20,000 have departed, yet on-the-ground voices insist nearer to 100,000 flee. The Kremlin's reply? Familiar deflection and hush. Broadcasts proclaim victory unchallenged, yet thoroughfares echo hunger for clarity, squish under slick earth, and pulse with raw dread. What if this engineered deluge isn't the worst twist, but just the prelude to an even deadlier unraveling, where power vanishes and safety crumbles further? In the wake of an unprecedented attack, the city of Belgorod has transformed into a chaotic backdrop reminiscent of war-torn landscapes. Scenes of panic unfold as convoys of fleeing civilians blend with military vehicles. Families hastily gather their belongings, clutching cherished pets, while many abandon their cars, trapped by fuel shortages. Water and electricity have vanished, shops stand shuttered, and ATMs lie dormant amid the rising tide of despair. Officially, more than 20,000 individuals have evacuated the affected regions, but local estimates surge closer to a staggering 100,000. In a disturbing twist, the Kremlin opts for denial. State-controlled broadcasts insist on a successful operation, yet the streets pulse with desperation, with thirst and mud forming an unholy union. This gross misrepresentation starkly contrasts the chaos that is the new reality. The drone onslaught has unleashed unprecedented turmoil, striking power distribution centers and transformer stations across Belgorod and the neighboring Bryansk area. The Luch transformer station, pivotal for the city's electricity, has faced relentless drone attacks. The objective? To cripple normal life. As winter looms, people are left without the warmth of heating systems, while refrigerators fail to preserve food. Hospitals struggle to function, relying on intermittent generators, and children attempt to study by the flickering glow of candles. Communication lines frequently falter, plunging the region into disarray. This electricity crisis reaches deep beyond civilian suffering, undermining crucial military operations in the area. Belgorod and Bryansk serve as vital logistical hubs for Russian forces operating in northeastern Ukraine. The supply chains essential for motorized infantry brigades and special forces, including elements of the 6th Army and the 44th Corps, traverse these regions. Command centers, radar stations, and military depots heavily rely on a stable power supply, and with that disrupted, operational capacity dwindles. The cascading failures in these services mark the first sign of cracks in the social contract that Vladimir Putin's regime has promised to uphold. The state's inability to provide even the most basic needs to its citizens leaves the already tension-ridden home front more vulnerable than ever. Could this series of failures lead to a pivotal shift in loyalty among the people? The heart of Russia's military and civilian infrastructure now beats under the strain of chaos, but how much longer can it endure before everything collapses? As the lights flicker and darkness looms, an impending crisis reveals itself. An overwhelming military might, once thought impenetrable, lies vulnerable and defeated under the relentless shadow of strategic warfare. This precarious situation further weakened an already burdened home front, leaving it at grave risk of a looming water crisis. But this was not a lone issue, it unfolded alongside a full-blown security catastrophe. The systematic targeting of critical infrastructure signals one of two dire possibilities, either a failure so profound that Russia's air defense network stands blinded, or an unyielding inadequacy against the ferocious waves of drone attacks. Ukrainian aircraft have not only breached the airspace but have repeatedly honed in on the gems of Russia's resources. Once thought impossible, the notion of a reliable air defense has crumbled in these border regions. Civilians and soldiers alike now experience the gnawing fear of vulnerability, a sentiment that grips the heart with a chilling embrace. As desperation builds, tens of thousands are likely on the move, creating a spontaneous and chaotic evacuation. This migration, though uncoordinated, sends waves of terrified citizens fleeing towards safer havens or into the unknown, leaving behind ghost towns and memories shattered. The ramifications are not just strategic but deeply personal. Loss blankets the land. This exodus represents a harrowing failure for the Putin regime. The very people it vowed to protect are forced to abandon their homes, not for safety, but because their government has let them down. Compounded by a breakdown in internal security, local police and internal defense units now grapple with increasing unrest, while the threat of sabotage trickles closer. The resources to manage such turmoil are scant. With military priorities firmly focused beyond the borders, any semblance of public safety diminishes, triggering a rise in petty crime and fueling the flames of panic. The governor's plea for evacuation becomes an unsettling acknowledgement. The state has lost its grip on security, leaving its citizens to fend for themselves amidst a sea of uncertainty. What happens when the very protectors of a nation become the harbingers of its own dismay? The answer lies in the haunting silence that blankets the once thriving communities of Belgorod. Picture this: a dam cracked open like a fragile eggshell, unleashing torrents that drown homes and dreams in the dead of night. That's the shocking reality Ukraine unleashed on Russia in a bold strike that shattered more than just concrete. It gutted lives and rocked the Kremlin's fortress. On the night of October 25 to 26, 2025, drones pummeled the dam system in the Belgorod region, sparking a domino effect of catastrophe. This wasn't mere sabotage, it weaponized water itself, eroding Russia's grip on stability. Explosions ruptured the wall, tanking reservoir levels below the brink. Satellite snapshots revealed a gaping fissure in the north, with wild leaks flooding discharge channels. Disaster loomed, total collapse or a forced, chaotic release to stave it off. Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov, voice strained, urged evacuations in Shebekino, and for some, it became law. 10 zones plunged underwater, obliterating millions of dwellings, blocking roads in a muddy siege. Belgorod's 1.5 million souls felt the quake, with 450,000 in Shebekino, Grayvoronka, Nekoteyevka, and Borisovka zones facing ruin overnight. A so-called safe haven morphed into a vortex of war and flood. In Russia's west, water fuels not just thirst, but power plants, fields, and troop lines. The dam fed crops and army routes alike. Its fall snuffed taps, halted convoys, blacked out hospitals, bakery ovens gone cold. Worse, floods paralyzed pumps amid blackout weeks, poisoning what water remained. Untreated disease festers. Experts warn, stabilize soon, or drop like Crimea's grips Belgorod. The assault crippled the northeastern front too. Belgorod gateways logistics to Kharkiv ops. For motorized brigades, special forces dig in. Supply chains for the 6th and 44th Armies coursed here. Artillery bases, fuel tanks on Grayvoronka and Nizhnaya lines swamped. Units isolated, no reams, no escape. Morale shattered as troops slog ammo through muck, logistics crushed in mud and mirrors. Ukraine's retort echoes, "You drowned Kakhovka, now water swallows you." Belgorod scenes scream chaos, military trucks snarled with fleeing cars, families gripping suitcases, cats in arms, leaving vehicles for vanished fuel. No electricity, water, shops shuttered, ATMs silent. Officials claim 20,000 evacuated, locals say 100,000. Kremlin denies, TV spins victories, but streets reek of rot, mud, terror. Recalling, a crisp early October morning, frost-nipping air, the hum of generators fading as lights winked out, plunging homes into candlelit shadows, kids shivering under blankets, whispers of war creeping closer than ever before. How could Russia's defenses fail so utterly, allowing drones to strike deep, humiliating guardians meant to shield the heartland? Domestic fronts crumbled under drone barrages on transformers. Targeting Luch Station, Belgorod's lifeline, hits sparked outages lasting hours or days across city and countryside. Bryansk's lines fared no better, 6 sites near the border, especially Trubchevsk, crippled civilians and troops. These weren't flukes, Ukraine zeroed in on grid vulnerabilities, aiming chaos maximal. War invaded kitchens, ripping warmth, light, words from daily rhythms. Moms rocked babies by flashlight, fathers growled at silence. Morale bled dry, homes turned torture chambers. Repeating strikes exposed air defenses as a farce against drone swarms. Kremlin, once invulnerable, now hit where it hurts most. This lit the fuse for endless blackouts, and primed the region for fiercer blows as energy assaults ramped up. Ukrainians pivoted early October 2025, shifting tactics. Trenches bled on, but drones hunted Russia's guts, power hubs. Goal? Strangle logistics beyond armies, choking lifeblood of electricity for homes and helmets. First Luch fell, hit thrice, darkening Belgorod. Then Bryansk, lines lashed, local and military lives disrupted. Significance? Deliberate grid assault for upheaval. Russians' worlds upended, heating vanished, fridges failed, hospitals hummed on generators, schools flickered by wax. Propaganda coup, turned comfort to nightmare, sap resolve. Repeat hits screamed defense impotence. But what fireball hides in these shadows? Could one blast ignite Russia's collapse? To mend or flee, desperate cries echo as forces pull thin, stirring riots and raids amid floods. Could this be Ukraine's masterstroke, twisting water into Russia's deepest wound? From the shadows of disrupted home fronts, where lights flickered out and whispers of dread filled the air, a terrible truth emerged: Russia's defenses against drones were crumbling, leaving its heart exposed to relentless strikes. Can you imagine the thunderous roar of explosions ripping through a factory that churns out the fuel for war itself? On October 21, 2025, Ukraine unleashed a devastating blow on the Bryansk chemical plant, a monster in the heart of Russia supplying gunpowder, explosives, and rocket fuel for the military juggernaut. This wasn't a distant echo, it was a shattering reality, silencing artillery and rockets across the front lines. The plant sat tantalizingly close to the Ukrainian border yet deep in Russian soil, its destruction screaming that no bastion was sacred. Feel the acrid stench of burning chemicals lingering like a curse, the ground shuddering beneath your feet as advanced storm shadow missiles pierced the veil. Governor Bogomaz spun lies, claiming no harm done, but the smoke betrayed him, eroding the Kremlin's fragile trust. How could such a blow linger unnoticed? This assault revealed Ukraine's rise from needle pricks to seismic shocks, crippling the war machine at its core. Security that once felt ironclad now cracked underfoot, turning fearless citizens into shadows of fear. What hidden cracks allowed this fortress to fall? Russia's elite air defenses, meant to shield frontier hubs like Belgorod and Bryansk, had vanished like mist. The Kremlin yanked them away to guard Moscow and Crimea, leaving the edges bare. Warped metal twisted in the damp night air. Cars abandoned in mud-choked streets, the bitter chill creeping in without warmth. How far would Ukraine push, and what buried secrets would the next strike unearth? In the chilling shadows of conflict, a storm brews that threatens to drown the very heart of a nation. October 25 to 26, 2025, marks a catastrophic turning point for Russia. An audacious drone strike by Ukraine targets the critical dam system in the Belgorod region. This is not just a strike, it is a declaration of war against the foundations of Russia's fragile control. As the explosions ripple through the night, the dam wall trembles, revealing fractures that signal impending doom. The once reliable reservoir begins to drain, teetering on the edge of disaster. Satellite images document the chaos. A vast crack runs along the northern wall, where uncontrolled torrents threaten to unleash devastation. It's a race against time. Will the structure collapse entirely, or will it unleash a torrent of chaos to save itself? Either scenario spells utter catastrophe. Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov, the beleaguered leader of Belgorod, stands on the precipice of despair. Frantic announcements pierce the night, urging residents of the Shabakino region to prepare for evacuation. The urgency is palpable. This is no longer a warning, it is a lifeline, turning into a compulsory escape as 10 neighborhoods succumb to the swelling waters. Amidst the anguished cries, the reality sinks in, nearly 500,000 lives disrupted in a single stroke. This area, dubbed the safe zone since the war began, now morphs into a nightmarish intersection of military conflict and humanitarian crisis. As the waters rise, they wash away homes and uproot lives. But water, so vital for existence, is also the lifeblood of military logistics. Agricultural vitality and energy production. Now, with the dam in ruins, an essential supply chain fractures. In the heart of Belgorod, millions face the dark realities of flooding and dwindling resources. Power outages have rendered water pumps useless. The remaining water is tainted, a silent threat of impending drought reminiscent of the tragic crises witnessed in Crimea. If this chaos isn't contained swiftly, the echoes of thirst, hunger, and desperation will reverberate through Belgorod streets. The ramifications reach far beyond civilian life. Belgorod serves as a crucial military logistics hub. Units from the Russian army, including upwards of 4 regiments in the region, face imminent disruption. Artillery positions, once secure near the dam, find themselves engulfed by floodwaters, leaving soldiers to wade through what was meant to be their territory, lost in an ocean of uncertainty. Images of Belgorod blur between wartime chaos and natural disaster. Civilian convoys intermingle with military vehicles, pausing only to gaze at the unfolding tragedy. Individuals clutch pets and suitcases, the echoes of their hurried exits carried by the wind. Fuel shortages leave cars abandoned, empty shells of lives interrupted. Amidst the screams, state television spins tales of a successful operation, but the streets tell a different story of fear and longing. While over 20,000 evacuate, local whispers echo a far graver number, closer to 100,000 people fleeing a fate sealed by neglect. The Kremlin, however, remains shrouded in silence. A fortress of denial as citizens grapple with their newfound vulnerability. The water crisis intertwines with a broader calamity as Ukrainian drones systematically degrade energy infrastructure, casting darkness into every home. As winter looms, power outages intensify the suffering. Modern comforts collapse, heaters fail, food spoils, and children huddle in candlelit rooms. Military efficiency phrases critical supply lines, vital for troop movements in northeast Ukraine, struggle to maintain operations. Can a military sustain itself if stripped of basic utilities? The chaos sweeping across the Belgorod and Bryansk regions crystallizes a growing disillusionment among citizens. In the cracks of the chaos, a deeper truth emerges. The government's failures resonate loudest in the faces of those powerless to shield their lives from catastrophe. The lack of response exposes a dire disconnect between the local authorities and the central government. The fragile facade of authority crumbles as stories of neglect seep into the public consciousness. But the tragedy unfolds further. Could the Kremlin's prioritization of protecting the metropolitan heart of Moscow be a fatal betrayal of the border regions? Strategically significant air defenses seem concentrated in the capital, leaving border towns like Belgorod vulnerable. Could this be seen as a political gamble, where the lives of ordinary citizens are deemed acceptable collateral? As the conflict drags on and the attacks deepen, the Kremlin appears more desperate than ever, redistributing its defensive assets to shield the heart of its empire. This leaves Belgorod and its surroundings as sacrificial pawns in a dangerous game of survival. Wounded and defenseless, can the regime maintain its narrative of strength while its own citizens suffer? The human cost of political failure is now glaringly exposed, a chilling reminder that in the game of survival, even the bravest can lose their way. Imagine the deafening roar of explosions shattering the night sky over Belgorod, a scent of mud and acrid smoke choking the air as water surges relentlessly. Soldiers struggle through flooded trenches, their boots sinking deep into the muck, feeling the icy chill seep through their uniforms. Have you ever wondered how a single drone strike could shatter an empire's facade, turning safe havens into hellscapes? This isn't just a tale of war, it's the unraveling of a regime's grip on its own people. Picture the echoes of December 2024 fade into memory, crisp snow crunching under feet, the sharp bite of frost on skin, families huddling by crackling fires in cozy homes.
Then, the invasion began, promising protection for Russian-speaking kin.
But flash forward to now, that promise lies in ruins, border towns abandoned, infrastructure bombed to oblivion.
Why does sacrificing these regions expose Putin's boastful claims?
His vow to safeguard the Russian world crumbles when Ukrainians, armed with cheap drones, ravage what billions can't defend.
Building on that shattered facade, let's dive deeper into the cracks.
Local leaders grapple in silence while Moscow spins tales of victory.
Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov stands at the epicenter, his voice trembling as he urges evacuations in Shebekino. How does his predicament highlight the Kremlin's collapse? Unlike the distant denials in the capital, Gladkov faces the fury of drenched survivors, their clothes heavy with clinging silt, eyes burning from polluted rivers. He admits the dam's breach, no small feat for a loyalist, yet whispers of control from above ring hollow. Imagine the sting of betrayal, locals seething at unwashed skin and empty stomachs, while officials like Gladkov juggle rage and allegiance. Moscow offers no aid, just a veil of lies burying the chaos. Could this breed rebellion between regions and the core? As abandonment festers, Gladkov might pivot against the silence, risking his fate. And Ukraine?
Oh, it's a masterstroke, eroding the home front with surgical precision.
Can such ruthless play topple giants?
By exploiting vulnerabilities in an asymmetric clash, targeting the army yet crippling civilian spirits, Ukraine humiliates by revealing impotence. Yet, the game escalates with more than floods.
Supplies rot in drowned depots, fuel lines vanish under waves, and hospitals hum with failing generators amidst the drip-drip of leaks.
Feel the rough texture of rationed bread on tongues gone dry, the splash of makeshift ferries carrying stranded troops.
What if Russia's borders crumble before the trinities of water, power, and chaos? This triple threat slashes through defenses, flooding paths in Belgorod's northeast. How did a mere drone ambush ignite such havoc? Striking the dam on October 25 to 26, 2025, wasn't random. It cascaded into collapse, draining reservoirs and flooding 10 zones in Shebekino. Homes crumple, roads plunge, displacing 450,000 from a 1.5 million populace. Safe zones, once war-protected, now drown in a watery siege. Electricity flickers out across the land, transformers like the Luch station hammered since October's dawn. In Belgorod and Bryansk, wires sizzle and snap, leaving hearts cold and screens blank. Smell the burnt ozone lingering post-outage, the clammy darkness where children huddle with flickering candles. Why does it wound beyond civilians? Military might stalls, communications fracture, supply lines clog. Brigades, from the 6th Army to the 82nd Airborne, flounder in the blackout. Evacuees pour out by the tens or hundreds of thousands, bags slung over weary shoulders, pets clutched tight in the chill. Cars litter streets, fuel scarce amid the gurgle of rising tides. ATMs idle, shops shutter, thirst mingling with despair. Governor Gladkov's orders sting, flee or perish. How many flee the betrayal, turning villages to deserted relics? Ukraine's strategy twists the knife, attrition expands to civilian veins, choking energy lifelines. Drones swarm, undefended skies a farce. What price for Putin's Russian world? Millions in damage from pennies of tech, families scattered, empire mocked. This isn't conquest, it's the slow poison of exposure, forcing Russians to flee their birthplace. As winter looms, heating fails, food spoils, and security frays. Guards strain against unrest, looters prowling silted ruins. Roads jam with internal exiles, tasting freedom's bitter irony far from the front. Will Russia endure? Or crumble under its own weight? The dams break, waters rage, and the regime drowns in its echoes. In a stunning escalation of conflict, Ukraine has shattered the facade of security within the Russian borders. By launching drone attacks on strategic infrastructure, Kyiv is altering the battlefield dynamics in ways that challenge the very heart of the Kremlin's narrative. Did you ever think that a few drones could wreak such havoc? On the night of October 25 to 26, 2025, a calculated strike targeted the dam system in Russia's Belgorod region, an attack that was anything but routine. This was the opening gambit in a cascading series of crises. By targeting not just military assets but also freshwater resources, Ukraine struck at the very foundation of Russian stability. The devastation was immediate. Explosions rippled through the dam, creating fissures and causing water levels to plummet to alarming lows. The images that followed? Satellite photography showed catastrophic damage and uncontrolled flooding threatening to engulf entire communities.
As the smoke cleared, local authorities grappled with the magnitude of the disaster.
Belgorod's governor, Vyacheslav Gladkov, reluctantly issued emergency evacuation orders. Suddenly, what was once a safe zone had transformed into a nightmare for nearly 500,000 civilians. Streets flooded, homes destroyed, panic gripped the Shabakino region, 10 areas submerged and millions left without basic amenities. The looming threat was grim. This was not just an environmental crisis but a direct attack on the Russian populace's sense of security, prompting the dire question, how could the government let this happen? With supplies and energy resources dwindling. Chaos ensued not only among civilians but within the Russian military ranks as well.
The Belgorod region, a crucial logistical hub, saw units frozen in place, cut off from resupply. Soldiers, once brimming with confidence, struggled to regain control amidst rising waters. While they fought against nature's wrath, was their will to fight being swept away alongside their vehicles?
Ukrainian strategy had awakened a vulnerability within the Russian regime.
By hitting energy facilities across Belgorod and Bryansk, Ukraine's forces brought the war directly into the homes of ordinary Russian citizens. Anxiety turned to despair as residents faced prolonged power outages, basic needs went unmet, and military morale plummeted alongside civic confidence.
Could this be the beginning of a cascading collapse? The Kremlin's response? A mix of denial and misinformation, while civilians were left without water, electricity, or safety. As the government maintained its narrative of success, the people of Belgorod stood amid mud and fear. The very air thickened with desperation and speculation. What would happen next? The relentless drone strikes, cost-efficient tools of warfare, forced Russia's defense resources to stretch thin. This strategic overreach of the Kremlin's capabilities had left gaps, inviting doubt amongst its citizens. What if the regime's grip was slipping? As winter approached, a chilling uncertainty loomed. With heating systems down and communications interrupted, the potential for chaos increased. Those once loyal could turn against a state unable to fulfill its basic duties, creating a vacuum of safety just in time for inevitable unrest. Could this be the catalyst for an internal uprising? Ukraine's move to destabilize the borderlands was multifaceted, targeting not just military might, but the psychological fabric holding Russia together. This was a fight against the regime at its core, an asymmetric conflict where infrastructure crumbled, and the spirit of the people festered with dissent. If everything continued on this path of uncertainty, would the Kremlin not only lose control of the borders but also the allegiance of its own people? Only time would tell. In the shadows of crumbling infrastructure and creeping uncertainty, Ukraine's relentless strikes have ignited a firestorm in Russia's borderlands, turning secured zones into war-torn floodplains and exposing the Kremlin's iron grip as fragile and crumbling. Have you ever imagined entire communities vanishing like ghosts in the night, abandoning homes steeped in the scent of mildew and damp earth, all because their own state failed to shield them? Chronic unrest grips these battered borders now. The shrill wail of emergency sirens pierces the air, mingling with the gurgling rush of flooded streets. People clutch sodden belongings, their feet sinking into mud that clings like desperation. Russia's once unyielding authority fades here, leaving lawlessness in its wake. What happens when a nation's lifeline snaps? Basic needs evaporate, no lights flicker in pitch-black homes, no warmth fights off the biting chill of autumn winds. Generators hum faintly, but their roar betrays the fragility of survival. Imagine villages morphing into forsaken wastelands, where the echo of emptiness replaces the bustle of daily life. Ukrainians have weaponized fear itself, shattering not just bridges and power lines, but the trust binding citizens to Moscow. Governors like Vyacheslav Gladkov whisper evacuation calls amid the chaos, yet they can't hide the truth. State power is a ghost, evaporating under relentless drone hums overhead. The tactile chill of wet walls seeps into bones, as if the land itself rejects its rulers. Sensory echoes abound, the acrid sting of smoke from crippled transformers. The slippery grip of waterlogged roads underfoot. Rhetorical pangs hit hard. If protectors turn abandoners, who will rally to the cause? This spiral digs deeper, beyond mere floods. Bryansk and Belgorod teeter on oblivion, their economies drowned in debt and despair. Tax revenues dwindle to nothing, while Moscow faces billions more in aid, a cruel twist soaking everyone's pockets. Displaced hordes swell, their numbers ballooning to tens of thousands, wandering like shadows seeking refuge. Unemployment spikes, crime rises like floodwaters, fueled by general hopelessness.
A shocking revelation emerges: these regions, once Russia's proud frontier, now bleed resources, morphing into aching sores demanding constant care.
The irony stings: what victory parade can mask homes trashed by one's own neglect? Military might withers too. For vital regiments, pinned down in Brafovka by rising waters, lose their edge entirely. Artillery sinks under waves, fuel depots dissolve into muck. Soldiers wade through chest-deep currents, hauling munitions that feel like dead weight.
The army's pulse falters, supply lines snap like brittle twigs.
Ukraine's strategic brilliance humiliates Putin, turning his homeland into a battlefield for his own troops.
Visualize it: murky depths swallow vehicles whole, soldiers gasping against the pull, their uniforms heavy with the stench of decay.
Communications crackle with static, cut off mid-urgent cry. Another rhetorical blow: when defenders drown in their duty, how does an empire endure? Yet the darkest twist looms: an unexpected erosion of loyalty. Historical bonds to Ukraine simmer beneath the surface, challenging Putin's grand narratives. Propaganda screams unity, but reality whispers abandonment. Citizens, once loyal subjects, eye the horizon with feral hunger, restless denials flickering in their minds.
This isn't passive grumbling, it's a seismic shift toward rebellion.
Towns empty, family legacies uprooted, entire generations displaced by the regime's ineptitude.
The tactile ache of loss presses on: cold, empty shelves, the earthy rot of ruined crops.
Smells of abandonment linger, sharp and unforgiving. In this crescendo of crisis, regions once vital arms become liabilities, sapping strength from the front lines. Tens of thousands of soldiers, meant for Ukrainian clashes or NATO vigilance, stand idle now, swamped in domestic quagmires.
Putin's grand designs falter, his borderlands a self-inflicted wound.
But as the waters recede, what festering revenge bubbles beneath? Could this unrest spark open defiance, with citizens turning on the hand that starved them? The air thickens with unspoken dread: will Putin stave off the flood, or watch his empire crumble from within? A whisper of mutiny hangs heavy, poised to erupt.
The bitter despair choking these regions is morphing into a sprawling national nightmare.
Fears of rising unrest ripple outward like toxic waves. Troop positions submerged under relentless floods. For regiments crippled, their strength drained away. Soldiers meant for Ukraine's front or NATO's defense. Now ghosts in the fog, paralyzed and powerless. Imagine the irony slicing deep. The Kremlin's boasts crumbling. Putin dreamed of Ukraine on its knees.
Yet his own heartlands drown in chaos.
Homes shattering, families scattering. Hundreds of thousands adrift, tasting the bitter floodwater on their tongues. Mud clogging their boots, sirens wailing through shattered night. But wait. What if this is just the prelude to something darker? Could the rebels within, those whispered about in border shadows, seize the void? Shadows lengthening over abandoned villages. Guns echoing faintly, the stench of neglect thick in the air. Is this the twist Putin never saw coming? His war devouring his own empire, turning saviors into ghosts? Tens of thousands of warriors sidelined. No longer shields for distant battles.
Instead, phantoms haunting flooded plains. Ammunition crates rotting in mire, the squelch underfoot mocking past glories.
Rhetorical dagger: how does a tyrant drown his own people while proclaiming victory? The tactile grip of desperation.
Cold rain soaking uniforms, fingers numb on useless triggers.
Victory slips through fingers. Territory eroding, loyalty fraying. Historical ties like frayed ropes, pulling Belarus toward Ukraine's orbit. Propaganda melts like ice under drones' buzz. Homes left as rubble, hearts hardening against Moscow's silence. Shocking question haunts the air: could this catastrophe birth a reborn rebellion, swallowing Putin's grip whole? Claustrophobia in ghost towns.
The sharp crack of gunfire fading, replaced by enduring emptiness.
Smell of damp earth and defeat.
A final, devouring twist, as Russia's borders bleed into irreversible fracture.
The war's jaws clamp shut. Consuming the architect's own legacy, leaving ruins that scream louder than any bomb. Tens of thousands of soldiers
rendered obsolete, unable to storm Ukraine's lines or guard NATO's threshold.
While Putin envisioned Ukraine's capitulation,
He's unleashed a tidal force engulfing his own lands, submerging hundreds of thousands in merciless flood and despair.
The conflict he ignited, now ravenously devouring his homeland's core. Void of mercy, pitiless in its feast.
In a shocking twist amidst the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, an audacious drone attack propelled by Ukraine struck a key dam system in the Belgorod region. This dramatic escalation on the night of October 25, 2025, was not merely a tactical maneuver, it was the spark that ignited a catastrophic sequence of events that left a profound impact on both military strategy and civilian life.
How could a calculated strike against water infrastructure become a weapon of warfare?
The explosions targeted the dam structure, precipitating critical water shortages in surrounding areas. Before dawn broke, satellite images revealed a fissure in the dam's northern wall. The reservoir's water level plummeted dangerously low, foreshadowing a looming disaster. With two looming alternatives, total collapse or uncontrollable water release, the stakes were higher than ever. A state of emergency was declared by Belgorod's governor, Vyacheslav Gladkov, who initiated evacuation protocols for affected communities.
As families began to pack their belongings, the once peaceful area transformed into a scene of panic.
Imagine a landscape where homes once stood proud, now swallowed by rising waters. The tragedy unfolded as tens of thousands were forced from their homes, with a staggering 450,000 residents affected in the Shabakino area alone. What had previously been perceived as a safe haven now morphed into a disaster zone, where civilians faced the dual threat of a military offensive and a water crisis.
The region's vitality was intricately linked to its water supplies, essential for agriculture and energy production. Suddenly, these critical lifelines were severed.
With military units previously stationed nearby now isolated and their supply lines disrupted, the Russian army's capabilities crumbled. Soldiers battled not only the chaos of flooding but also the heartbreak of seeing their equipment submerged. The logistical paralysis was unprecedented, as vital operations came to a standstill.
The question loomed, could the Russian forces adapt to this surreal and hostile environment in time?
As plumes of dark smoke billowed into the sky, the images from Belgorod painted a grim picture. A once vibrant city lay in disarray, marked by the sound of sirens and the cries of people seeking refuge. Over 100,000 civilians fled, carrying only what they could salvage, while government officials clung to a narrative of control amid the chaos. Yet, in the streets of Belgorod, the stark contrast revealed an undeniable reality of thirst and turmoil. In the grim backdrop of this disaster, the Kremlin's silence echoed louder than gunfire. As winter approached, power outages loomed over civilian life, and desperation grew among the population.
With heating systems failing and basic services crumbling, how long could this crisis continue without igniting widespread unrest?
Compounding the turmoil, Ukrainian drones systematically targeted energy infrastructure, rendering essential services obsolete. Hospitals strained under the weight of failing power systems, children huddled under candlelight, and families began to question the very fabric of their daily lives. Each strike was a calculated message from Ukraine: your systems are vulnerable, and this is just the beginning. This continued assault on Russian resources unveiled the depths of the vulnerability in national defenses, and the airspace that was thought to be secure felt more like an open invitation for infiltration.
Each new attack dismantled confidence in the government and its promises of protection. What happens when a nation realizes its leaders cannot safeguard them?
As we peel back the layers of this humanitarian and military crisis, it becomes increasingly clear that the unraveling of Belgorod and Bryansk is not merely a result of military ambition. This situation reveals a profound gap in strategic planning and a chilling narrative of neglect from those in power, compounded by the inflexible priorities of conflict management. The tragedy for the people of these regions is just beginning, and the final consequences of this war will be felt for generations to come. Imagine if your home, once a sanctuary, was suddenly torn apart by an unstoppable flood. Could you escape the rising waters before it's too late? That's the nightmare unfolding in Russia's Belgorod region, where Ukraine's relentless drone strikes hit harder than anyone imagined. On the night of October 25 to 26, 2025, a dam wasn't just attacked, it was shattered, unleashing chaos that ripped through lives like a raging river. This was no ordinary hit, it sparked a cascade of crises, targeting not only metal and machines, but the vital flow of water itself.
The blasts hammered the dam's wall, plunging reservoir levels dangerously low.
Satellite shots revealed a gaping fissure in the northern side, with torrents erupting uncontrolled into the discharge channel.
Disaster loomed in two grim paths: total wall collapse or a forced, wild release to avoid it. Either way, ruin beckoned, flooding homes and roads alike. Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov couldn't dodge reality anymore.
In a stark office alert, residents of the Shebekino area got the call to pack for potential evacuation. In some spots, advice turned to urgent command: evacuate now, or risk drowning.
10 Shebekino zones lay submerged, with countless dwellings obliterated and rural paths severed by murky floods. The human toll? Enormous.
Belgorod's full populace nears 1.5 million, with about 450,000 souls in Shebekino, Grafovka, Nihotiva, and Borisovka facing the brunt.
One night, the attack shattered nearly 500,000 lives in an instant. The bitter irony? They dwelt in zones labeled secure from war's outset. Now, that haven merged hells of battlefield and watery calamity.
In Russia's west, water transcends mere hydration. It's a linchpin for powering lights, nurturing crops, and fueling armored advances. The Belgorod dam system sustained fertile farms feeding the populace and trooped routes. Its ruin means taps run dry, tanks starve for fuel, vital spots like med centers lose juice, and even bakeries halt. But the deluge brings worse shadows. Pumps stalled weeks ago from blackouts now face this new void. What water remains is tainted and foul. Whispers warn that without swift fixes, a Crimea-like drought could parch Belgorod within weeks. Civilians thirst, yet soldiers on the northeastern front reel too. Belgorod pulses as a key hub for Kharkiv-bound ops, hosting at least 4 motorized infantry and elite units. Supply veins for the 6th Army and 44th Corps thread here, amplified by nearby artillery sites and fuel banks along the Grafovka and Oskol rivers, now drowned. Some platoons stand cut off, trapped in soggy isolation, no resupplies, no retreats, striking deep at spirit and strategy. Troops wade waist deep, hauling burdens through chilling currents, where logistics crumbled utterly.
Ukraine's intent gleams clear: retaliate for Kharkiv's wounds with flooding fury.
Belgorod's vistas now mirror fractured war zones. Refugee caravans mix rubber and steel. Fugitives clutch bags and pets, ditching rides for missing gasoline. Power flickers out, stores bolt shut, cash machines freeze. Official tallies claim 20,000 fled, but ground truths murmur closer to 100,000.
Moscow's echoes stay hollow. State broadcasts hail victory while streets choke with dusty panic and rancid mud.
Yet the region's woes spiral beyond this breach. 4 months, Ukrainian drones hunted switchyards and power webs in Belgorod and Bryansk. Hubs like the Luch substation in Belgorod's heart, and pivots in Bryansk's outskirts, endured repeated barrages aimed at plunging all into pitch black. Winter's bite approaches, heaters fail, fridges spoil essentials, infirmaries rely on groaning generators. Schools flicker by candlelight, links snap intermittently. These blackouts hammer civilians and the dense Russian forces entrenched here. Belgorod and Bryansk anchor northeastern Ukraine campaigns, channeling goods for 4 motorized or special brigades, swaths of the 6th Army and 44th Corps, plus outfits like the 82nd Airborne Regiment and 138th Motorized Infantry Brigade clashing in seized areas. Command nests, radar scopes, repair bays, depot guards all hunger for voltage. Without it, war machine sputters, comms fray, prowess wanes. This ongoing drain first breached Putin's unspoken pact, failed basics for citizens, fraying home faith and amplifying water woes. Adding to the maelstrom, utter security breakdown, taxing both uniforms and folks. Relentless infra hits scream air defenses failure, blinded or frail against swarm drones breaching airspace to hammer prized spots. Russia's iron wall myth crumbles in borderlands, leaving armies and ants defenseless. Likely, hordes flee, self-propelled exodus to kinfolk or safer Russian depths, leaving hamlets ghostly. It's a PR gut punch for the Kremlin. Own soil abandons citizens the state can't shield. Within, unrest festers, cops and Rosgvardia split between quelling riots and watching Ukrainian infiltrators, resources scarce with fronts priority 1. Petty havoc rises, pilferage surging amid rattled minds. Gladkov's nod to depart? A veiled conf-governmentation of lost control. This carnage stems from Ukraine's patient blueprint, whittling Russia's edges via drones on infra, straining militarily, economically, psychologically amid Kremlin's glaring lapses. It ignited early October 2025 threefold attacks, shifting from grind to infrastrikes deep within Russia, chiefly energy veins. Goal: choke all support, extending malevolence to lifeblood for homes and guns. Prime targets, Luch substation, Belgorod's Jussier, hammered anew in early October, sparking outages from fleeting today long affecting city and countryside.
Bryansk's grids endured likewise 6 near borders, especially Trubchevsky, crippling locals and units. Historical weight?
Precision chaos, exploiting grid fractures for max mayhem, dragging war through doorsteps.
Heat, light, calls, gone.
Eroding home front resolve by daily torments. Repeatable hits exposed air defense's flaws, unable to guard homeland jewels.
Kremlin floundered, sowing for water crises ahead.
Imagine this, in one night of chaos, a Ukrainian drone strike shattered a dam in Russia's Belgorod region, unleashing floods that drowned homes, crippled armies, and left 500,000 people scrambling for safety. What if the water rising from that destroyed barrier or the uncontained surge to prevent collapse was just the start of Russia's worst nightmare on its own soil, turning a so-called safe zone into a battlefield where soldiers wade through mud and civilians gasped for breath without power or clean water? In that explosive moment, Ukraine didn't just hit defensive points, they threatened the very essence of Russia's unstable control.
The blasts punched through the dam wall, dropping reservoir levels dangerously low.
Satellite footage revealed a huge fissure in the northern side, with unchecked drainage escaping like a wounded beast bleeding out. Feel the rumble of distant explosions echoing through the night air, the acrid stench of explosives lingering over the river, the cold splash of rising water soaking feet as cracks widen. Now, two horrors loomed: total structural collapse burying everything beneath torrents, or a forced, reckless release that could wash away villages.
Whichever path, devastation awaited. Did Russia's leaders see this coming as their fragile order crumbled under Ukrainian ingenuity? Picking up from the dam's fractures threatening catastrophic floods or uncontrolled outflow, Belgorod Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov faced the brutal truth. His administration issued urgent alerts, urging Shabakino residents to pack up. In key spots, advisories hardened into non-negotiable orders to flee.
Picture frantic voices on the wind, the squish of soaked earth under fleeing steps, the metallic tang of fear in the air as 10 Shabakino areas succumbed to waves.
Millions of homes crumbled, roads became impassable barriers of mud.
With Belgorod's 1.5 million people and around 450,000 in Shabakino, Grafovka, Nekatayevka, and Borisovka alone, this drone assault crippled nearly 500,000 lives instantly. They dwelled in zones branded safe since war's dawn, now a grim overlap of conflict and deluge.
In western Russia, water isn't mere sustenance, it's the heartbeat for power generation, farms, and troop movements.
So, what twisted fate awaited when that system fell apart, cutting off lifeblood more vital than any pipeline? Building on how the attack turned safe havens into drowned outposts, affecting energy, food, and supplies for vast crowds, the dam-like complex fed Belgorod's thirsty fields and fueled military routes. Its fall meant no more tap water, no gasoline for convoy engines, no juice for hospitals or ovens. The stench of stagnant floods fills nostrils, the slippery grip of wet earth under boots as pumps falter from prior blackouts, turning what's left undrinkable.
If unstabilized in weeks, a Crimea-like drought could grip here too, shriveling hopes.
Yet, the floods hid darker perils for Russia's northeast front. Belgorod serves as a key transit hub for Kharkiv thrusts, housing at least 4 motorized and special regiments. Supply chains for the 6th Army and 44th Corps snake through. Artillery sites and fuel dumps on the Grafovka-Nuza riverside now immersed.
Some troops isolated, unable to resupply or retreat.
Hear the sputter of drowning vehicles, feel the weight of hauled ammo and swirling currents, a rare paralysis where strategy drowns. Ukraine's retort was sharp: you shattered Kharkiv reservoirs, now feel our tide. Images from Belgorod mirror war's anguish: refugee columns mingling with armed trucks, suitcases clutched with pets, abandoned cars due to fuel shortages. Official evacuations topped 20,000, locals whispered 100,000. Kremlin spin claimed victories, but streets reeked of mud, echoed thirst, harbored terror. Still, chaos rippled farther. Recalling the logistics stranglehold flooding army hearts and homes alike, Ukrainian drones had hammered for months. They picked apart huge substations and grid lines in Belgorod and Bryansk, crippling life's core. The Luch substation, Belgorod's main power vein, and Bryansk troop hubs endured repeated blows. Without electricity, existence stalls as winter grips. Hearts stay cold, fridges rot food, wards rely on shaky generators. Classrooms flicker by candlelight, ties snap under constant drops. But warfare suffers too. Belgorod and Bryansk are hubs for northeast Ukraine ops, supplying 4 motorized or special brigades, 6th Army Bits, 44th Corps Elements, 82nd Airborne, and 138th Motorized Brigade in occupied areas. Radars, depots, comms, all need that jolt. Power cuts stall movements, deafen signals, erode strength. This ongoing blackout breached Putin's pledge, stripping basics from citizens. Fraying homefront nerves before the water wars escalated. Echoing the blackout blows weakening defense and society, a deeper turmoil gripped, a blend of military gaps and civic perils. Relentless infrastructure hits exposed Russia's air shield as blind or brittle, drones slicing sovereign skies to shred prized assets. Doctrine of impenetrable skies unraveled on borders, leaving folk and fighters exposed. Tens of thousands likely bolted inland, sparking wild migrations to kin or safer ground, ghosting villages. A stinging PR blow for Putin, own people fleeing, state unable to shield. Meanwhile, internal order teeters, policing Rosgvardia juggling riots, foreseeing Ukrainian raids, with army front bound, resources skimpy. Thievery and plunder could spike, amplifying insecurity. Gladkov's urge to evacuate? A silent confession of safeguarding failure. This spirals from Ukraine's methodical pounding, eroding Russia's fringes militarily, economically, psychologically, amid Kremlin oversights. Tracing back to that triple bind of floods, blackouts, and insecurity, it ignited in early October 2025 with Ukraine's shift. Grinding war on lines raged, but drones dove deep, eyeing Russian vitals, chiefly energy. Goal: strangle not just war flows, but life and battle underpinnings via grids. Iconic hits? Luch substation first, pummeled multiple times in early October, blacking out Belgorod city and countryside for hours or days. Bryansk grids followed, 6 sites near borders like Trubchevsk, hitting homes and units. Historical echo, targeted grid vulnerabilities for Max Mess, dragging war indoors. Jolting routines warmth, light, ties disrupted. Aim, crush morale, wielding daily hell. Repeat signaled inadequate defenses against drones. Kremlin couldn't guard home turf essentials. This paved waves, birthing the damn disaster as capstone. But twists lurk. What if Ukraine's next unseen vector flips everything again? What humiliating echo rings for Russia as floods mirror their own strikes? The waters rise, and with them, question, can any barrier hold against such patient fury? What shocking fact could unravel Putin's iron grip on his own borders? Imagine the rumble of explosions echoing through the night, the acrid scent of gunpowder mingling with the earthy damp of rising floodwaters, as Ukraine turned the tables on Russia in a strike that felt personal, almost poetic revenge. Starting where we left off, the key to this relentless destruction lies in the gradual erosion of Russia's air defenses in regions like Belgorod and Bryansk, areas supposedly shielded by the nation's most formidable shields. Yet, Ukraine's repeated assaults on vital targets expose gaping weaknesses in that supposed impenetrable wall. How did such a breakdown occur? The Kremlin, in a desperate gamble, pulled its cutting-edge air defenses from these border zones to safeguard Moscow or vital spots like Crimea. Picture the sting of that choice, a gamble that left civilians and soldiers exposed, as if their lives were mere chips in a high-stakes game. Ukraine, armed with lethal anti-radar missiles like HARM types sourced from Western allies and their own advanced drones, prowled like silent hunters, picking off Russian radar arrays and command hubs one by one. Each down launcher tore another hole in the defensive net, exposing raw wounds that bled vulnerability. Now, imagine the irony: these systems, designed to dominate the skies, falter against swarms of small, sluggish drones skimming low. They couldn't track or intercept the onslaught, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of threats slipping through unhindered. And here's the twist that flips the script: could Putin's own strategy have sabotaged his people? Prioritizing distant forts over border homes? As we trace the arc of destruction, we're led to the climactic strike at the end of October 2025, a calculated echo of retribution that reverberates through history. Why call it Kakhovka's shadow? Think of it as payback for the ecological horror unleashed when Russia detonated the Kakhovka Dam in June 2023, drowning livelihoods and lands beneath waves of chaos. Ukraine's message? You shattered ours, now feel the torrent. Feel the chill of that intentional blow, targeting not just earth and steel, but the very pulse of Russian logistics. Would the dam fail entirely, unleashing floods that could drown habitats for 4 Russian brigades, choking their movements in a watery stranglehold? Or force a wild surge of waters, a forced release to avert total ruin? Either path spells catastrophe for homes and battles alike, a strategic storm Ukraine orchestrated with chilling resolve. Their precision strikes highlighted the rot in Russia's defenses, where air shields crumbled like sandcastles against the tide. The Kremlin, haunted by echoes of prior blunders, stood silent, failing to bolster protections for this fragile hub of water and power. And in this moment of revelation, we uncover the profound betrayal. Was this humanitarian nightmare born solely from Ukrainian cunning, or did Putin's priorities, swapping shields for distant theaters, betray his citizens, crumbling the facade of a protectorate state? The air thickens with unspoken fears, as shadows of doubt creep in. Will the tide turn, exposing cracks in an emperor's armor? Or deepen into an abyss of untold reckonings? Diving deeper, that anatomy of ruin exposes a betrayal shrouded in secrecy. Vladimir Putin's choices may have doomed these lands to abandonment. How could a leader forsake his borders for glittering centers, allowing the home front to fray like worn fabric? Yet, Ukraine's triumph isn't just a victory of drones and missiles, it's a mirror reflecting Russia's crumbling core, where neglect breeds nightmares. And as the waters rise and lights dim, one wonders, could this be the flood that finally sweeps away illusions of invincibility?